members, good evening and welcome. My name is Anna Spooner and I am part of the tastings and events team here at the Wine Society. Don't know about you members joining from the UK or others watching on YouTube. It's a little windy here. So I apologize in advance. I can hear my windows rattling. So I'm hoping that you can all hear me fine. But if you can't hear me properly this evening, or you can't see, or there's another technical issue, please do get in touch with one of my colleagues, Gil or Tim. They're behind the scenes this evening, and you can get in touch with them by emailing tastings@thewinesociety.com, or use the chat button and just address tastings team when you select who to send your message to. Pardon me. So we've got Gil and Tim behind the scenes, and then we have 4 very exciting producers, winemakers, sustainability experts to speak to this evening. And I'm really excited. It's our first ever Leading Voices event. I know there's been a lot of excitement around this, a lot of members emailing in to say they can't attend, but they're desperate for questions to be asked. And is it going to be recorded? So yes, this is going to be recorded, so we can send you a recording. And don't worry, 90 minutes is quite a long time. We probably won't fill the full 90 minutes, but the nice thing is it's a webinar format, so we can't see you. So if you want to have your dinner and enjoy a bit of dinner whilst you're listening, then I suggest that's an incredibly good idea. I haven't got dinner to enjoy, but I am going to enjoy a glass of wine, and I know a couple of our fellow speakers are as well. So I hope that those of you who are tasting along can use the chat and let us know where you are and what you're drinking. Last but not least, please do use the Q&A button to ask questions. We've gathered the questions, we've already been emailed, but if you have any questions during the course of the event, use Q&A and then you can type your question in there, and Gil and Tim behind the scenes are going to help me collate those questions for the end of the session. So a little bit about the event before we start. I mentioned it's been a sort of work in progress, our Leading Voices idea. It's been several months really really fine-tuning what we want out of these sessions. The concept really is that we want to bring the leading voices from the industry round a virtual table to discuss a topic. Now that topic could be grape variety, or it could be a style of winemaking, it could just be a philosophy. And since we've made some pretty bold claims at the Wine Society, we're going to stick our flag in the ground on sustainability. We thought what better to kick off than the topic of sustainability with 4 very different producers and domains from around the world with incredibly different experiences. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the guests to introduce themselves by telling us who they are, where they're based, so the winery and the country ideally, and what style of wines they produce. So shall we kick off with, let's go with Simon. Simon, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. It's 8:30 in the evening on the southern tip of Africa. I'm about 10 kilometers from Stellenbosch and 30 kilometers from Cape Town. We produce a range of wines, starting with Cup Classique or sparkling wine, and then a range of white wines, and then reds. We've started our harvest 5 weeks ago, and we will complete the harvest in 5 weeks' time. So it's 10 weeks. But yeah, nice to be here.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I'm going to hand over to another member of the Southern Continent, and to Todd.
Good morning or good evening. It's 7:30 a.m. here in Nelson, New Zealand. So that's the top of the South Island in New Zealand. Nelson's a small region. Neudorf vineyards is who I work for. We've been producing wine for about 40 years, and probably our icon wines are Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but we do make a little bit of Albarino and Pinot Gris and Riesling.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Todd. And you've just told me you haven't quite started harvest yet.
No, we don't start for another 3 weeks, and we don't take 10 weeks either. We're probably done in 3 weeks.
I think Simon's probably sitting there a little jealous. Thank you so much, Todd. And Valentina, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Here is 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. So we are in the, it's not a time for a glass of wine yet. It's a glass of water right now. I am Valentina Lira. I am the Sustainability Director at Viña Concha y Toro. We are placed right here in Chile, the headquarters of the company, but also we have operations in Argentina and the US. I am in Santiago right now. It's very summer, it's a very hot summer here.
Don't make us all jealous, Valentina. Cruel. And last but not least, we're really pleased because he's rushed back from the Paris fair to speak to us, especially this evening. Jean-Jacques, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for organizing this nice meeting between members and producer. I'm Jean-Jacques Dubourdieu. I run with my family 5 family estates in Bordeaux, specifically in the Sauternes, Grave, and Côte de Bordeaux appellation. So our grapes are Merlot and Cabernet for the red, of course, and Sauvignon for the dry white mainly. And we use Sémillon for the Sauternes and Barsac production.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So quite a range of wines being produced from all of our speakers this evening, but they do share one huge thing in common, which is a commitment to sustainability. So we're going to start talking about it. We've got some images to show you throughout the course of the session, but this certainly isn't a presentation. We're going to have a really in-depth conversation. We're going to talk challenges, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, the whole works. So I'm going to kick off with incentives, actually, because I think it's really important for members to understand why you would start to consider the sustainability of your company. So Valentina, I'll start with you. What were the incentives to produce wine more sustainably at Concha y Toro?
I would say this is something that in the case of a company like us was very market driven, okay? Because in the beginning, I will start in like the 90s. We had some initiatives in order to take care of the soil, take care of water, but we were very doing a lot of work, but only inside the company. We were not very good at telling the rest of the people what we were doing. We had that kind of sustainable agriculture, but it didn't have that name at that time. It was more like being worried about the soil or the biodiversity. We have a program that started in 1995, so in protecting the forest. So in the beginning, I would say it was more like an inside job, and then when sustainability became more something like an attribute for the companies, then we started to tell a little more about what we were doing. And then it was in the 2005, I would say. It was a very unique time, because during that period until 2010, there was a lot of clients asking, requesting information, wanting to know. And then we had to start being more active in communicating those attributes to the customers, because they were very interested in doing that. So after that, we were today is more open. Transparency today is vital for business. So today we're very open about the things that we are doing and all the initiatives that we're running inside the company.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Now Jean-Jacques, when I asked you this question, you had a really interesting answer when I sent you some sort of pre-questions, should we say. I'd be really keen to hear your take on what was your inspiration. You had a fantastic answer to this.
I'm not sure to remember the answer, but I think I told you that sustainability in our case, first of all, it's our history, because we are growing vines since 1794 here in the little village of Barsac. My family, and I think to start, this is the best proof of sustainability. And as Valentina says, we were not that good to communicate about that, because for us it was just natural. And little by little, the market start to ask, and we were like, "What do we do?" It was even a question for us at the beginning, and actually it's like a breath. So we realized that we have many action. Like a tradition now. So what is new is we start to communicate about that. So now, for example, it's a little detail, but for example, just beside our boutique in the winery, we have bee houses. And when the visitors come, they are very surprised and interested by bee house and by the fact we produce honey. But actually, my great-grandfather was doing that in the middle of the vineyard 1 century ago. So now it seems to be very fancy to make honey in the middle of the vineyard, but actually there is nothing new. We didn't invent anything.
Wonderful, thank you. I love that idea. Sustainability is history, it's future proofing, and I think that's wonderful. Thank you. So I'll hand over to Simon now, if it's all right. Simon, what inspired you?
I think 2 reasons. One out of necessity, and the other just that it's the right thing to do. And the necessity is that we faced many challenges in South Africa. In 2000, well, I think it was about 2007, we had massive blackouts in South Africa, and we had at that time just about the cheapest electricity in the world. And then all of a sudden it became unstable, and we had a lot of power failures. So we went in the direction of solar. Probably a lot of people around the world heard about Villiera in Cape Town, where all of a sudden, because of massive droughts, there was the chance that Cape Town would be one of the first big cities in the world to run out of water. And through a concerted effort from everybody, we avoided that. But we gave a lot of attention to saving water. We've got a history. Everyone knows about apartheid and the social side of that. So we've been very involved in the social aspect of our business as well. And then sustainability, if you do it correctly, makes money for you. It reinforces the bottom line. So if you do the right thing, you get the right results. So if you don't get involved, then you're crazy. And I would like to support Jean-Jacques. I think a lot of what we did in the past was sustainable. We lost track in the last 100 years or so with cheap energy and that, and wastefulness and packaging and all of that. But prior to that, the world was sustainable. It's a new thing that we're no longer sustainable. So we need to look back to go forward.
Yeah, what a lovely sentiment. That's great. Thank you so much, Simon. I'm going to come back to the cost, or at least the money side of sustainability at some point during this, because I think you hit on a really interesting point. But I'd just like to finish with Todd, your inspiration or your impetus for practicing sustainability at Neudorf.
Well, I would again also echo Jean-Jacques' comments about history. Now, we don't have history, or not as certainly as much as they do, but we're looking to build history. So it's about a generational game. We've got the founders, Tim and Judy, Rosie, their daughter's taking over, and she's just had a baby who may not take over, who knows. But if we don't make the piece of dirt that we live on, because they do live on site, sustainable, then the future generations just don't have a chance to prosper from that. So yeah, it's a relatively simple solution, really, to be honest. It doesn't require too much thought.
Thank you. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Todd. So we're all sort of in agreement. There's a few different sort of takes on it, but I think generally a feeling of looking back to look forward is something we all agree on, which is great. I can tell you now, not all of your answers agreed on all of the points. So I will just, before we go on to celebrating some of the successes, which I'm really excited about doing, we've got some great pictures of the things that you guys have all been up to. But Todd, you actually mentioned in our sort of pre-interview, if you want to call it that you find the financial gains actually quite hard to measure for sustainability. So I just wondered if we could explore that a little bit, and then maybe get Valentina and Jean-Jacques' point as well. Simon seems to think that sustainability can make you money. Is it as black and white as that?
For us, no. You know, you can put your price up on a bottle basically and say it's organic, but that space is becoming very competitive, and it's just not a simple transaction like that. And some of the things that we do to become sustainable, or to be, shall we say, tread as lightly as we possibly can, end up possibly meaning we actually spending more money. It's, you know, you'd have to get the forensic accountant out to sort of go through the financials with a fine-tooth comb to see, you know, what was working and what wasn't. But we haven't seen our costs go down, let's put it that way. For example, you know, if you want to tread lightly, you really want to use people and not diesel with tractors. But the minimum wage has gone up in New Zealand by a horrific amount. So labour costs are gone through the roof. So yeah, I think I get the point. I just don't, for us, I don't think it's a significant saving, if anything.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I've certainly heard other winemakers on previous talks and events say that sometimes they have to eat quite a lot of the costs in order to do the right thing. So yeah, it seems like perhaps not everyone gets the financial reward. Valentina, what's your experience of that?
In our experience, I would say that it's more like something like a balance, because I can imagine some examples in which we have received a lot of environmental benefit and also a reduction in cost, in the operational cost. For instance, this is the first example that I can remember, is the use of renewable energy. Okay, so for us, for instance, in the some years before, here in Chile, you were not able to buy freely to any generator of energy. So you had to buy the energy from the, you know, the Chilean or the Chilean net.
The grid.
The grid, yes. So you were not able to buy, but in 2016, the law changed and you were able to buy to any renewable or non-renewable generator and use the same grid to transport your energy. So it was a huge revolution here in Chile, because you were now able to buy renewable energy. I know you have that in the UK from a very long time. It's not new for you, but it was very new for us. It was a revolution in the energy world, and we were able to start buying renewable energy. And not only is energy with a low impact on the environment, or zero emissions, zero CO2 emissions, but also it was energy between 12 and 15 lower prices than before. So I think that's a good example, because in that case, we were able to provide an environmental benefit, but also an economical benefit for the company. So it's something that you are able to see. Is something that you have to look for in order to be sustainable, because I think you cannot spend a lot of money in something that is not balanced with the economical or social. You have to look for that balance. And also some other example, I'm sorry, but I just thought of that.
Have another one.
I have another one, which is also very important for the wine industry, because it's the lightweight bottles.
Mm-hmm.
When you work with lightweight bottles, you are not only using less glass, but you are also implying less carbon emissions, and also you are using less raw materials, so it's a lower price. So you have a combination between an economical benefit, but also an environmental benefit for the complete society. So I think if we take a look, we will be able to find a lot of different examples like that.
Thank you, Valentina. That's great. And bottles is certainly something I know our members are interested in. So we'll come back to that later.
Yes.
Jean-Jacques, just finishing with you. France can be quite a challenge, can't it? There's a decent amount of bureaucracy, I would say, around the different labeling terms. I was going to mention this a little later, but I'll mention it now. You've got HVE, you've got Terra Vitis, then there's organic, biodynamic, biologique on top of that. Do you think sometimes that those sorts, the prices of getting accredited can sometimes be quite challenging for wineries in France?
I think all these certification are interesting because it's of course a good way, as we all say. This is the only way. But I try to be on the seat on the consumer. It's a bit complicated to understand all these different certification, and sometimes I'm a bit worried because focused on all this certification, we forget the main thing, which is the taste. We are all working around that, and if you pay attention, it's not that strange, but when the taste is good, the things are done well. It's the same when you buy a tomato at the market. When the tomato is good, incredibly, actually, it's well grown. So maybe we also have, as a producer, to communicate about the taste, and usually the taste is the consequence of a sustainable process. Of course, you can find any exception, but usually the taste is in the middle of everything. And sometimes we forget that. And I think the consumer also is a bit lost with all this certification, because at the end, the consumer wants to spend a good moment and share a good bottle with his family and friends. So I think in all this tendency, we also have to be focused on the taste, identity, personality of the wine, because this is the main subject, I think.
Mm-hmm. And if the consumer can recognize quality, perhaps they pay more, and then we can keep fulfilling the investment we have in sustainability too.
Exactly, because to give you an example, in Clos Floriden, we build a little building to produce our own compost, our own fertilizer. Mm-hmm. So we crush all our vine canes after pruning, and with the machinery we spray it with the water from with the used water from the cellar. And we add some green stuff from all the garden from the estate, and we are able to produce about 100 tons of natural compost.
Wow!
But it costs money, so the consumer is not immediately ready to pay more. Mm-hmm. So in the first time, we spend money, mm-hmm. and we hope that in a long-term view, little by little, people will understand what we are doing. but it takes time. And in between, we are financing. So that's why the taste at the end of the day is also a big issue, because this is the only way to give information to the consumer that he pay more, but he has also something more and theoretically a better wine.
Wonderful. Thank you. Very well said. So I'm conscious of time, and what I really want to spend a little bit of time on is everyone giving some examples of the initiatives, because the broad range of initiatives between you all is really wonderful. So we've just heard from Jean-Jacques. We've got some fun photos of those bees you mentioned earlier, but we'll come back to you in a moment. Perhaps, Todd, you'd be able to run us through a few initiatives that you have down there.
Well, both our vineyards are organically certified vineyards. We have solar panels on our winery roof. We have an electric forklift. We have lightweight bottles throughout our entire range. We've got, someone mentioned bees. We do have bees in our headlands. We use sheep to mow our grass at particular times of the year, and we also use them to leaf pluck. It's a particular time, you know, when required. That needs a little bit of attention to detail, I would add. Yeah, we've got headland plantings of native species. So yeah, we try to sort of keep it relatively diverse. We have our own, we compost as well.
Thank you. I have to say the sheep are particularly wonderful, and I've never ever heard of sheep leaf plucking. Would you be able to explain how that happens?
Well, it's just after the fruit has flowered, so it's still like a very small green pea, and surprisingly they will go for the leaf but not the fruit, because it's too sour at that point. You leave it too long, then you will have a problem. So they do have a, you know, you do have to watch them, but it is used.
So when the fruit gets ripe, the sheep are evacuated.
Yeah. They can. It's not like a machine, so you don't have an on-off switch. So you have to move them pretty quickly.
Wonderful, thank you so much. I think Jean-Jacques, you use. We've already heard about the bees, but you also use horses in some of your vineyards now. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, we use it because in some particular case, because we feel it's just more efficient. Actually, we don't do that for journalists or just for the photo, but because in the very old Sémillon in Barsac, in Sauternes, in Doisiden, there is a lot of irregular. I mean, it's not exactly in line. So with the tractor, we break a lot of vines. So with the horses, who has a lot less power than a tractor, we do a very more sensitive work, and we break less vines, exactly like in very young plants. So we try to be very rational in the use of the horses. And I'm not saying we are plowing 136 hectares with the horses, but just locally in a specific part of the estate, and it's just more efficient. So that's why we do that. It's not for the folklore, as we say in French.
Wonderful, thank you. And you've mentioned the compost and the bees already, which is amazing. You're very, how would I describe it? You're very focused on the farming elements, aren't you, of the production? And rightly so. You're a family-run domain and has been handed down for generations. So you have a lot of concentration on sustainable farming in particular.
And actually, it's also all around, which is very important. So that's why we are, for example, renovating in Barsac and in Clos Floriden and in Doisiden. We have a lot of little wall all around the vineyard to separate the plots. It needs a lot of care. We take a lot of time to keep it in shape, like it was in 130 years ago. We also plant trees all around the different frontier of our different estates to work on the biodiversity, but also to make the landscape nicer, because we are already a touristic area, but we want to stay a touristic area. We are close to a quite a big city, which is Bordeaux. So we have also to we have to be very careful with all the construction and landscape protection in general. So it's also our job, and it's not very it's not an organic certification, but to me it's also very important, like the certification itself. We certify also the area and the attraction that we can have, because wine is all about experience. So if people come in our area with a bad experience because the landscape, there is little houses in the middle of the vineyard everywhere, with a new construction, without any trees, with only vineyard and construction, it's just awful, and the experience is bad. So we have to work on that also, but it's a very long-term story, and that's why usually investors, when they arrive in the vineyard, are a bit disappointed, because they realize that it won't be in 5 or 10 years the story. It will be in 50 or 60 years. So it's a long story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jean-Jacques. Now, Simon, when I talk about sort of animals and farming, you've got a menagerie down at Villiera. Can you tell us a little bit about all of your animal projects and more?
Just the animal projects.
Well, the ducks are the ones that spring to mind immediately, but you've got plenty of sort of biodiversity and planting and things going on. So if you'd be able to tell us a bit about that, that would be wonderful.
Look, I'd love to say that we're still using ducks, but unfortunately we're not at the moment because of avian flu and that killing off the poultry. So it's a bit of a problem to keep ducks now when you've got poultry farmers that are close by. But we have a lot of wild birds that can also do part of the job. We haven't sprayed insecticides here for 17 years now. So we don't spray anything to kill insects, no miticides, no pre-emergence, no winter oils. We do rainwater harvesting from our cellar roofs. We catch twice the volume of water that we actually use in the cellar for washing and cleaning and for during the winemaking process. We produce a lot of solar power. We've set aside 230 hectares for wildlife. So we've got 400 large mammals there, 128 different types of birds. We stopped counting at 100,000 indigenous trees. That dam with that island on it is a solar pump. So there's a pump floating on the underside of that island, pumping water to the trees to water them. And it's water that we catch out of the wildlife sanctuary. There are 12 dams or reservoirs. We also use multi-row sprayers. So we only drive every second or third row. So we reduce the amount of labor, the amount of vehicles, the amount of compaction, the amount of diesel. We've got 8 electric vehicles that we use that are also much lighter, and we can charge from the solar. Yeah, so that's a lot of stuff on the environmental side. On the social side, we got an NGO. It's actually a lady, Sophia Warner from the UK, that started working with the children on our property 15 years ago. She's now got 47 preschools and after schools that she looks after, and she's based on our property. She's also got a clinic here that serves 3,000 people in the area. So the young children get off to a very good start in the preschool, and when they're in the proper schools, in the afternoons when they come home, they're helped with their homework, and those that have to get tertiary education are also helped with that. So it's a bit of a payback on the social side there as well. And yeah, there's quite a bit more, but I heard something about birds earlier, controlling the birds. I just want to say to Todd, there was someone out here 2 weeks ago, and they've got lasers that they produce in Holland, that these lasers have got a pattern, and they scare the birds out of the vineyard. So they had a handheld laser that seemed to work very well. But our problem isn't that great, so we weren't prepared to pay the money. But I think for you in New Zealand, it might be something to look at.
Yes, please.
Poor Todd on his bird. Oh, thank you so much.
The lasers don't do any damage to the birds. They just scare them. That's what I'm told.
Okay.
And you don't get any problems with the indigenous birds eating your fruit, do you, son?
Yeah, we do.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it's not a serious problem. And the more trees you plant, the bigger the problem. So then you got to plant more grapes. So my grandfather that originated in the UK, he said, you got enough land in Africa. Just plant enough for the birds and forget about them.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, on the subject of planting, I think, Valentina, I'll hand over to you. You've got some really great planting projects and all sorts of great fun things in the vineyard.
Yes, absolutely. And continuing the topic about biodiversity, we are very lucky because we have a lot of land in different states, in different regions of Chile. So we have different climates and different situations in the country that are representative of the different, productive areas. So today we have a forest conservation program, which is it's around 4,200 hectares of forest protected, and is also certified by the FSC standard, which is the Forest Stewardship Council, and we certify the ecosystemic service of carbon storage. So today we are very sure that the forest that is around the vineyards, like the ones that you can see right here, the forest that is around the vineyards is actually capturing CO2, and they are storing CO2 in order to reduce the effect of climate change. So we are very happy with that program, and also we continue encouraging the planting of more natural species in the vineyards, the plants, and the cellars in which we are present. So last year, we started a program and in which we are going to plant 1 tree per person that is actually working in Viña Concha y Toro every year. So it's very good because all the people, and during the Earth Day, they receive their, like some sort of certificate saying that the company is planting 1 tree in one of our vineyards on behalf of the people that is working in the company. And this was very, for the people, was very, I would say, emotional. And they were very, excited about the idea of having that. But we are also having some other initiatives inside the vineyards. Okay, like taking care of the soil, and also implementing different nesting houses for the birds, in order to start moving around the vineyard, but inside the vineyard, not only in the forest that is surrounding the vineyards. So that's what we're trying to implement, the regenerative approach to the forest. I mean, not to the vineyard, and also in the capacity of living together with the forest, being part of the same ecosystem, and they are providing services to each other, like protecting the water cycles and pests, and providing life in the surroundings of the vineyards. So we're very happy with the program. But I think in 2021, I would say our biggest success, I don't know how to, our biggest, the initiative that we are more happy with was becoming a BCorp during last year.
Yes, I was going to mention that in a bit, if that's all right, Valentina, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Perhaps in sort of 10 minutes or so when we talk about getting accredited. But I did want to pick up on something you've just asked. And for anybody who doesn't know, WSET, so the Wine Spirits Education Trust, if you have a, on the last part of all of the qualifications, so level 4, the diploma, you have to write an essay. And I didn't know, but I've been told by 2 people and another person in the Q&A that this year's question is, how can a wine producer improve their social sustainability through their employee relationships? Now, I'm sure we could all go on for ages there, but it did make me think, Valentina, your initiative with the trees, involving the staff in the project, seems really important. And I wondered if any of our other speakers have sort of had initiatives where they can get staff more involved in social responsibility, but also in environmental and all sustainabilities, really. So yeah, if anybody has, feel free to pop a hand up if you've got anything else to add. WSET students around the world would be very pleased. Todd, you go first.
Well, yeah, I echo the sustainable. Yeah, you tend to do things, will solve problems a lot more broader and diverse. And if you involve your staff, you make their job a lot more broader and diverse, and that generally results in a happier employee. And obviously for us, through our carbon mapping, we've sort of targeted that our employees driving into work each day is, causing a chunk of carbon. Now, not everybody can work from home, but sort of initiatives to work from home, that can play into mothers who sort of need to look after their children at certain times, what have you. So, yeah, I think in a broad brushstrokes, sustainable, well-run businesses generally should have some pretty good, happy employees.
Wonderful, thank you, Simon. I saw your hand go up.
All the trees that we've planted have been grown by our staff, so it's in excess of 100,000 trees that they grow. So
I think we have a photo of that, Simon, actually. I'll get it up whilst you're talking.
Yeah, 20 or 30,000 a year. We also have a tertiary education fund. So anybody that's got a kid that's doing well at school can apply to be helped to go to a university, for example. At present, we've got a staff member's son that's in his 2nd year of medicine.
Seriously impressive.
There are others, but
thank you, Simon. That's wonderful. Yes, I think there'll be WSET diploma students very, very pleased with some of those examples. So thank you.
Well,
so we've talked a bit about the vine growing, I should say, and we've talked a lot about biodiversity and things like that. But I suppose another pinch point, particularly for 2 of you, so I will focus on 2 of you if that's all right. Jean-Jacques, you probably don't have this problem in Bordeaux, but tell me if I'm wrong, and Todd, probably not you either. But for Simon and Valentina in South Africa and Chile, respectively, you increasingly with climate change, it's hard to avoid the topic of climate change in a chat about sustainability, but are you having to put more consideration into water resources? You've both briefly mentioned water. Simon, you've spoken about harvesting. Did you say twice as much as you use?
The harvesting of the water was just one small example where we harvest twice as much water off the roofs of the cellar than what we actually use in the cellar.
Wow.
So our cellar doesn't use water, it actually makes water. If you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
In the vineyards, we also capture any runoff water, drainage water, and we get water from the mountains. We blend it all together, and we utilize that for irrigation. Some of the vineyards, about 40 hectares, are unirrigated. The other vineyards get supplementary irrigation with drip irrigation. And we monitor very carefully how much water each vine gets so that we don't waste anything. But as I said, coming through day 0, we've had some recent experience of what it could be like when you run out of water, and we learned a lot. We're getting by with about 40% less after that lesson.
Thank you. I was in Cape Town around that time, and I have to say my attitude to water changed just from having been in South Africa for those 3 weeks. You know, your behaviors, yes, they can change quickly, and I'm sure you guys, having lived with that for so long, it's made some serious changes. So thank you. Valentina, I know that you have some irrigation facts or some irrigation initiatives yourself.
Yes. You know that, as you said, climate change. One of the consequences, I would say, the most difficult consequences that is going to have for Chile at the end is not only for the wine industry in Chile, but also our country. Is one of the countries that is listed like the ones that is going to be more affected by climate change, by the IPCC report, the last one. So it's going to be very challenging. Today, we have 100% of our land that is having drip irrigation as the source for water. Okay, but we understand that this is something that is more like a technological challenge, because we have to look for new technologies. And that's why we have a research and innovation center that is working very hard, looking for something like systems for irrigation based in information from satellites. Satellite information, and very, more advanced techniques in order to have implementation in the field. For instance, measuring humidity of the bites and everything more. We have to look for more technology in order to make the water more efficient. We are very sure that irrigation is the key, because when we have the water footprint of the company, we're able to see that 90% of that water footprint comes from the vineyard, and only the 10% is the plants or the bottling plants and the cellars. So it's something that that 10% is something that we can address with better practices and so on. But this other part is a technological challenge. Mm-hmm. And we have to consider not only the irrigation system, but also more plants more resistant to the stress of being without water for some time. So we have to test, different agricultural techniques as well. So it's it's not like one measure that you have to take. It's a lot of measures all together, tackling that the challenge that water is.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, Jean-Jacques, you may have a water challenge, I don't know, but do you have, whether it's water or another environmental challenge that makes sustainable practices a little harder?
As you say, water is not really an issue in Bordeaux because we have a 900 millimeter of rain. And even with the global warming that we feel, of course, in Bordeaux, actually the amount of rain is about the same, and even some years a bit increasing. So it will be a consequence of the global warming. At least it's what we observe. So it's an issue because with more rainfall there is more mildew, which is a big problem here. Not really oidium, but definitely mildew and black rot. So it's one problem we have, and especially last year or even 2018 also was complicated with mildew. But also we have a more frequent spring frost, because due to the global warming, we have a warmer winter, and the birds are booming too early. And as always, we have some spring frost in April, mid-April, which is normal. But the cycle of the vine is a bit in advance. And for example, in 2021, so the last vintage, we lost more 50% of the production because of the spring frost, but we already lost in 2017 as well. So between the hail, the spring frost, the mildew, and in the meantime, we want to be more and more sustainable in terms of spraying in the vineyard. So to be honest, with less and less efficient spraying, because at the end it's with the copper and more or less copper, so the organic specification. So it's less and less efficient, and we have more and more rain. So we are making less and less wine with the right amount of water. So I think everybody has his own issue in his own region, and yes, it's difficult, because I think in the coming years, when I joined the business with my father 16 years ago, the big issue was how to sell the wine. Now, more and more, it's how to produce the right yield per hectare. So things are really changing with the global warming, and the problem are not exactly the same.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques. And Todd, have you, just touching back, any challenges in the vineyards that make sustainability or behaving sustainably more challenging?
Yes, we would just echo Jean-Jacques' comments. With climate change, everything is just more severe and more erratic. And in regards to water, we don't usually have a problem having access to it. Generally, it can come from the sky relatively readily at times, and sometimes in too much. But because of our climate in New Zealand, it can be also very, very dry. So it's a very difficult environment to grow. We've got clay soils, so we can actually, and we dry farm most of our vines except for our young plantings. So water-wise, we're okay. But just touching on what Valentina sort of said, that's quite rare for New Zealand. Most of New Zealand vineyards are irrigated, and there's significant water pressures in some of the dry years because of the plantings and the available water schemes. There's been dry years where the water scheme's been turned off, and vines just had to wing it, basically. And so, Valentina, what you need to look at is subsurface irrigation. There's a lot of work that's going on in New Zealand about subsurface irrigation. There's a significant saving to be had in regards to that. But yeah, so for us, it's climate change on the whole, just very erratic.
Thank you, Todd. Just for clarity for members, I'm assuming subsurface irrigation is drips under the soil. Yeah,
you install the irrigation line about 30 centimetres, I'm led to believe, underneath the soil, so instead of above it. So you're getting all that water is effectively staying in the subsurface versus the stuff that drips and then, the loss through evaporation and what have you. lot of work going on in some of the bigger regions like Marlborough, where the soils are quite free draining and they need access to water.
Great, thank you, Todd. I'm sure it does no harm to root development either, and getting those roots digging deep. So that sounds interesting. Thank you. Now, I'm conscious of time, and Valentina touched on it earlier, so I'm going to swing back round to Valentina just to talk a little bit about BCorp, because my understanding, Valentina, is that you are now the largest winery or wine business in the world to be certified BCorp. So could you just give us a little bit more information on what that means?
Yes, BCorp is a global movement of different companies that are convinced that there is a new way of doing business, which is something that allows you to balance the economical, the social, and the environmental benefits of your business in order to generate a positive impact in everything that you're doing. So that it's is the philosophy behind the BCorp certification, and that is something that you have to like in any other certification system, you have to demonstrate that you are actually taking that actions, and you're actually behaving with that philosophy behind. So for us, it was a big challenge. It was a process that took us 2.5 years in order to comply with, because we were presenting this certification for the entire company. So all the offices around the world and the different subsidiaries in Argentina, Fetzer in the US was already certified, but we had a lot of work to do inside the company in order to collect the information, to train the different teams and so on. So it was very I would say it was very unique for us, because one of the things that this certification requests from you is that your commitment with the social, environmental, and the triple bottom line has to be not only, has to be forever. So they request that you change the bylaws of the company in order to incorporate that commitment. So in our case, it was something like, huge, because we are a company that has been here for more than 100 years, and we had never modified the bylaws of the companies before. So it was very significant because the board of directors was very enthusiastic at the beginning, but then all of the shareholders of the company had to agree on that. So it was something that we had to present at the general assembly of the company, and finally it was very I will say it was very rewarding to see that it was an unanimous decision of the shareholders of the company to express that commitment. So we were all very happy with that, and feeling like the effort that we have been doing for years, it was finally with a good result. The company commits to generate a positive impact in everything, or with every stakeholder that we are related with, trying to be a better company every day. That's the commitment in which we're working every day today.
Thank you. It's a huge feat and incredibly impressive. I think one thing, when I was sort of pulling this together, I wasn't sure whether to ask or not on this evening, because it is quite controversial. Accreditation around sustainability can be quite a controversial topic. And for members who are perhaps less familiar organic certification, for example, which you might assimilate with sustainability, is quite expensive to get, and also can be very challenging for producers, say in JeanJacques or Todd's regions, where perhaps they might be a little more disease prone. So I won't pick on anyone, but do any of the panel have an opinion on whether on accreditation? Because of course there's some very big positives around accreditation, but I'd love if anybody would be able to share a personal opinion on the good and the bad, or the good or the bad. Todd, yes.
We had this discussion when we started farming organically, whether we should become certified or not. And we didn't really want to, because it wasn't a marketing exercise. However, unfortunately nowadays, there's a lot of greenwashing, shall we say, that goes on. I've seen examples of, sentences, organic principles where possible, well, you either do or you don't. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the use of that word in particular has legislation around it in some countries, and in some countries it doesn't. So as painful as it is to go through the certification process and pay all those costs and the continual costs, we felt that it was appropriate that we did, just so it's done. We've been certified, we can use the word, it's got some relevance to it. So yeah, that's the double-edged sword, I'm afraid, of those sort of things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Todd. I won't pounce on anyone and force them to say anything, but if anybody else does have an opinion, feel free to raise your hand and I'll leave it there. Oh, go on, Simon.
No, I think certification is a good thing. You must be able to stand up and if you claim to be doing something, that it can actually be checked, that it's not a pack of lies. Yeah. Some of the certification is quite expensive and quite laborious. One of the problems I have with the certifications on sustainability is that, when I started farming, I could learn everything that I needed for my lifetime from my father. Now, every 4 or 5 years, things have changed. And on the certification is often lagging. And there are new things that are available. And when you get certified, the actual auditors are not up to speed. And they wear blinkers. And you often get hammered for a small point because it's something that you can tick yes or no. And some of the big things, like for example, if we plant 100,000 trees, we get no credit for that in some of the certifications. But if you got a dam and you forgot to analyze the water that you're irrigating, it doesn't really make any difference. If you get one analysis per year, but you must do it, say, twice. Now you would be hammered for that, and for that huge thing, you get nothing. If you put in solar, maybe, for example, it might improve your carbon footprint, but your carbon footprint only makes up a small portion of the audit and the points that you can get, because carbon footprints are relatively new. They weren't around when these audits were started. So yeah, there's a lot of improvement that can happen, but generally they're good. We need to watch the cost, and we need to make sure that the auditors are well trained and that they have lateral vision and that they can see what you're doing and make a decision of whether you're doing the right thing or not.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, Jean-Jacques.
Yeah, I completely, I do agree. I think the sustainable consciousness now is compulsory. So there is not even a debate. But once again, I think there is no dogma on that. At the end, as a consumer, when I buy a bottle of wine, I want a good wine. A bottle of wine is like a week of holiday. It's short, so it has to be nice. And usually you share it with people. So it has to be good. And if it's certified, if there is a sustainable consciousness, it's very nice. It's even better. But we don't have to forget the taste. Once again, maybe I'm repeating this idea, but I really believe in that, because the experience we are sharing tonight with the member of Wine Society is finally the expression of our own style in every country, with our weather, with our climate, with our terroir, with our grapes. And finally, all these certifications are very uniform. We all do the same thing about carbon neutral, not using herbicide, using horses and sheep in the vineyard. But actually, this is more or less common, and we try to be very positive in this sustainable attitude. But which is different, and what is interesting for all your members is the different expression of our style. So I think we don't have we have to avoid to dilute our style with certification, which is compulsory right now in the business. But I think it can't be the first element of the speech.
Yeah, and I think actually I take for granted that the producers we work with, the buyers, buy excellent wine. So when I was coming up with people to use for this event, or people to invite rather, I was very fortunate in knowing that I had quality across the board, and I had different styles I could choose, and then I chose people who I thought had interesting stories and perspectives. But you're quite right, Jean-Jacques, it should never be that the sustainability message comes before the quality of the wine, because the two need to work together. So and going back to Todd's point, there is an awful lot of greenwashing that's going on now, and people using this as a sales tool, which can be quite damaging. So on that point, actually, a few of you are members of some very interesting organizations, and I'm conscious of time, but I just thought if you could just give me a sentence on what they're about, because Todd, you are part of, and excuse me if I say it wrong, but SWINS. Is that pronounced correctly?
Correct.
Okay. So could you just tell members a little bit about what that organization represents, does it help you?
So SWINS stands for Sustainable Wine Growing New Zealand. It's a program that was set up by New Zealand wine growers quite some time ago, as a way to sort of galvanise the wine growing community throughout New Zealand in regards to record keeping and keeping an idea on what they were spraying, how much water they were using, diesel use, etc., etc. So it's a very broad program, and as time has gone on, it's been improved and sort of now taking into account I suppose carbon measurements. So it's the industry-wide, I suppose, accreditation, which I think about over 95% of New Zealand vineyards and wineries are accredited to. It's given the industry a huge amount of information, but it's also, because it came in with a soft landing and didn't sort of make it all regulatory, they got huge buy-in initially, and by getting buy-in, people then started to sort of form their own opinions, and before you know it, it's snowballed, and everybody's quite sort of on board now. So yeah, SWINS is the very, I suppose, general accreditation in New Zealand, and then on top of that, we have BioGrow Organics and also our carbon mapping ECOS.
Fabulous. Thank you, Todd. Yeah, I actually love that idea. I think it got a bit of stick at the beginning, SWINS, because it was quite easy to get buy-in and accreditation, but actually, exactly as you said, Todd, it meant that more people in the industry have started. And I've heard somebody the other day explain that now they're just going to slowly raise the bar. So they've got exactly right. Yeah.
Sorry, that's exactly right. If you regulate too hard, too fast, you get a select few. And that might be okay for, for particular accreditations where you want to make it quite difficult. But if you want to target the industry on a whole, you do have to have sort of a low bar to start with, get the buy-in, and then let it build up. And SWINS has been very good at doing that.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Thank you, Todd. You've explained it beautifully as well. Simon, you at Villiera are part of the Porto Protocol. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Porto Protocol was started in Porto in Portugal, and it's an organization that tries to get wine producers from around the world to share their stories on what they're doing to fight climate change. So if someone's got a story to tell and it works for them, then other producers around the world can listen to that story and possibly implement it as well. So rather than try and keep these things for your own gain, share it with the whole community, because climate change is not something that anyone can tackle on their own. It needs a concerted effort from everybody in the world. So from the wine industry, but all industries and all people. And so we have to realize that it's not something we can stand up and try and tackle on our own.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Simon. Does anybody else have anything to add to that, Valentina and Jean-Jacques? I appreciate I haven't asked you on that, but are there any communities? Obviously, Valentina, you have the BCorp, and I'm sure you can stand shoulder to shoulder with BCorp, other BCorp certified companies. Is that helpful? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, because we can, there is something that you share with some other company that is also a BCorp, because it's like, what happened with him when you had to evaluate yourself. So it's like something that you share, and there is a lot of communication among the BCorps. They try to connect, and they try to make business together in order to grow together. That's the main essence. It's a very nice community, and it's very open to share practices and so on. And one of the the other communities which we are part of is a group of companies that is behind the global ambition of reducing the temperature, or stopping the increment, or the increment in the temperature, and to stop the increment in 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the Race to Zero and ambition, business ambition for 1.5. That's an initiative from United Nations that started, I think, a couple of years ago, and there is a lot of companies committed to committed to zero emissions by 2050. Mm-hmm. So we are part of that group because we think that this is something that the world needs to work to make it happen. Yeah. And today we are not only working inside the company preparing their CO2 reduction plans, but also we are working with our suppliers, the packaging suppliers, because we understand the role of the glass, the cork, and the labels, capsules, boxes, everything in the carbon footprint. Around more than 80% of the carbon footprint of the company is in the packaging supplies. It's in the scope 3 packaging supplies. So we have to work with them. We have to push them to the climate action, and we are working with them. We think that is really, really important part.
You've led me perfectly, Valentina. We've had a lot of chat in the chat box and on the Q&A about packaging, and I think a lot of people are very aware.
Yes.
So as the business, the Wine Society have committed to be net zero greenhouse gas across business and supply chain by 2040. Oh. So yes, so that's been our mission. So we're actually And we're having from now, we're beginning to engage in conversations with our suppliers to talk about lighter bottles, alternative packaging, which is something we've not had chance to discuss yet. So I wondered, I think, Jean-Jacques, you're probably going to be the most challenged in terms of, should we say, stylistically. I think people will expect, you know, Bordeaux and Sauternes, Barsac wines to come in those big traditional bottles. Do you think it will be really hard to change the consumer perception?
Yes, especially for a wine like Sauternes that we are supposed to store in the cellar more than 1 century. It's difficult to, if we change the packaging, if we if we are using a screw cap for a bottle of Sauternes, it's a big challenge in terms of perception, but also technically speaking, because we don't know how it will age. So there is a big issue for our rosé of our white wine, especially the second label and the wine that we are supposed to drink within 5 years. There is, of course, something to do, and we already does a lot on using a special paper for the labels, lighter bottle, lighter cases, of course. But it's quite complicated, and also all the packaging is more and more expensive with the COVID story, but in general, it's more and more expensive. So it's lighter and lighter and more expensive. So it's also a big problem for us, especially on budget wine. I mean, as long as you have more added value, it's okay. But for budget wine, it's also kind of complex. So, and it's also difficult because, for example, our old presentation of Chateau Renan, for example, which is very famous in a 40 country, if we change it, I'm not really sure about the result in terms of sales. So, without being conservative, we have considered that it's a risk to change the presentation. So I don't have the answer. We are thinking on that every day, but right now it's also complex to get a white bottle. White bottle for the Sauternes because of COVID. So right now we are not thinking on lighter bottle. We are just thinking on bottle.
Just get a bottle.
We are not even sure to have it for the next bottling. So it's I have to say that it's also a big problem.
Now, Todd, you moved to lighter bottles quite a while ago. What was the decision? A financial one, a sort of environmental sustainable one?
We had a 2-speed program initially with our higher price wines were in heavier bottles, and our lower priced wines were in lightweight bottles. And we just got to the point where, well, you know, with our attention to carbon mapping and sort of just treading a bit more lightly, we just needed to transition. And we went through a similar sort of process with a thought process with that Jean-Jacques is thinking about, although we haven't got the history and the expectations, I suppose, that he has. But we just committed to it, just the whole range. A lot of our wine goes overseas. It was the right thing to do, and we haven't had any pushback at all.
Yeah, fantastic. Good to hear. Now, Simon, I believe that South Africa has certainly been at the forefront of a relatively new, I don't want to use the word trend, but certainly technological development, which is that you do now bottle, I shouldn't say bottle, you now can some of your wine. Sounds weird to say you can your wine. Could you tell us a little bit about that and the challenges that brings?
It's a wine that we do for one specific customer. So it's a sparkling wine that's done in a 250 ml can. And it's something that we've been doing for just over a year, and it's been very well received so far. But we're still in the early stages, and we'll see how it develops. But at the moment, it's selling pretty well. but it's not something that we're doing for the broader market at this stage.
Thank you. Was it I'm interested in how it's working down in South Africa, because if members aren't familiar, I believe that some, and I'm sure this wasn't the case with you, but I was told by one producer that there was a glass shortage during COVID, and some people had to use cans. And since then, there's been actually a little bit of a movement that people enjoyed them. Is that true, or is that an old wives' tale?
It's a possibility, because there was a shortage of bottles. The shortage didn't affect us because Kathy, my cousin, her husband, is very good on the ordering, and he always places his orders a year in advance. So we got the bottles that we needed. But the cans that we use for our wines were for a specific client, and it was big volumes. And we've had, touch wood, very few problems. So yeah, it looks like a possibility.
And not, it sounds like your wine isn't a keeping wine anyway. It's a quick to consume wine, so that lends itself more to
Well, it's
cans.
a sparkling wine.
Yeah.
So the carbon dioxide in the wine helps to preserve it. And but it doesn't sit on the shelf very long. It's been very well promoted, and it moves very quickly. So far, so good.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Valentina, I believe that you have also got some wine in cans and bag in box. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. But we have some products using that kind of packaging also for the UK market, and they have been very well received. But I want to take something that I read right here on the chat, saying, someone is saying, why do we assume that cans or skewer caps are more environmentally sustainable than glass bottles? Okay, I think it's very challenging, because sometimes we think immediately that bottles are not, or have something because they are not quite sustainable. But I have to say that bottle is a very I would say is a very noble material. It's a very good material. It's very good one. It's recyclable and everything. We actually did in 2018. We did a comparison using the life cycle assessment of the different kind of packagings, considering the can, the carton for beverage, like Tetra Pak, cereal, cans, glass, and many, and I think that was the 5 categories that we used, and bag box, and we compare all of them. But if we consider the different the different aspects of the life cycle assessment, which is not only carbon but also water and recycling and waste and many other environmental and social impacts, the aluminum cans were the first ones, were the less environmentally, with the less impact. And the second place was the bottle. And then you have the other ones, the bagging box and so on. Even when bagging box, you say, oh, it's only cardboard and plastic and it's all recyclable. But, there is for instance, in Chile, it was that kind of situation that we received. So it depends on the market, but also depends on what is the situation for the material in the post-consumption. Something that you have to consider to see what is the best packaging for the situation that I have. Because if we have cans in Chile, for instance, we don't have the chance to recycle the cans here. We have to send them to Brazil, which is crazy. So you have to consider the situation in every country. It's not an easy question.
Yes, it's more complex than a
Yes.
single answer. And
Absolutely.
and Justin has just written, to be clear, and I think this is the case, yes, the full life cycle assessment suggested that can was the most friendly, eco-friendly, followed by glass, and then after that, bag-in-box, etc.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Valentina. That was very insightful.
Yes.
Now,
Thank you.
I'm conscious of time. We said we were sort of thinking we'd between 60 and 90 minutes, but we could do another 90. I won't force you to. It's Simon's bedtime and Todd needs to go into the vineyards. But what I would like to say is, as a final question, I'd love if each of you could tell us something that you're really excited about sustainability. What's next? What's your next big goal? What are you working on? Looking, that lovely phrase from Simon earlier, looking back to look to the future. Where are you looking back now, and looking to your futures? So if we could start with Jean-Jacques, what are you most excited about on your sustainability projects?
Globally, what I would like to be within a few years is to be completely independent in terms of energy, electricity and water. It's not exactly the case right now, but it's possible. I mean, it's makeable. And also to be RSE certified, so social. I don't know the word exactly. It's the translation is corporate social responsibility. So it's one more certification, but I think this one is very global, taking care of everything, and also the social impact. And I think I really believe in that, because we hire to make wine, and behind a bottle of wine we need to employ a lot of people. And we also have to communicate to the consumer how we treat all the team, and how we transmit the know-how from a generation to another, how we accommodate people who are working for us in our village during the season. So all this aspect is not treated by the certification right now, and the CSR is completely helping on that, and I think consumer is interested in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jean-Jacques. Todd, the same question to you, please.
Well, I think we need to minimize our energy use. So again, it's sort of carbon reducing where possible. We might have to wait for technology to catch up with the likes of electric tractors and what have you, but we need to keep on doing this. And then I think for us to transform or continue to work our vineyards to become more carbon responsive. So we're in the early phases of looking at regenerative farming practices, which isn't new. Just to sort of touch on what Simon sort of said, sort of looking back to the old days, and things like biochar, crimping of cover crops, as opposed to sort of minimizing any soil disruption. So, yeah, little bits and pieces here and there to make a greater whole.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Valentina, the same to you, please.
Yes, what we are facing in the near future is that, I mean, this year we launched the sustainability strategy for 2025. So in that guideline that we have for the company, we have set goals for energy, biodiversity, climate change, water, diversity, equality, inclusion, also the community, the relation with the community, with our customers and our clients. And our consumers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the sustainability strategy is based on 6 pillars, all of them based in the different stakeholders. So what we expect for the coming years is to follow that route and to achieve the targets that we have set for 2025, to continue working in reducing carbon emissions and become a company net zero emission by 2050, and following the climate action in that route.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but by no means least, Simon, I had a glass of the Society's Chenin, and this evening has been so interesting. I think I've only managed to take 2 sips. So historically, this is the slowest I've ever drunk one of your wines. But I'll hand over to you, Simon, for the same question.
One of the relatively new things we've done is no-till. So we don't cultivate our vineyards anymore. So it's just something I want to put in there. The other thing is we need to look at our carbon footprint, because the carbon footprint is basically a measure of our waste. And if we can reduce it, then we're doing the right thing. So it entails everything that involves emissions. And so we want to look at bringing it right down, and whatever it takes, whether it's recycling, whether it's fuel efficiency, if it's solar or whatever, we want to bring our carbon footprint down.
Wonderful. I have to say thank you all so much. Those 90 minutes has flown by. It has been such an informative session, and I'm sure our members appreciate it. For anybody watching on Catch Up as well, because I know there will be lots of you, I hope that you've enjoyed this evening. It goes without saying that we're, as the Wine Society, so proud to work with businesses like yours, particularly as we start to develop our sustainability measures even more. We've got a new hire, our new head of sustainability. So I have no doubt that people will be leaning on you, as I think they already have from the Wine Society, to glean some of your knowledge and your insight, because the 5 of you really are at the forefront of sustainable wine production around the world. So it is with a huge thanks to the 5 of yourselves, to Tim and Gil behind the scenes, and also to all our members for joining. Really engaging chat, great questions as well. So thank you all for supporting what the Wine Society are trying to do, but also what these 5 lovely speakers are trying to do as well. So thank you and cheers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Anna.
You're very
Hope to see you
welcome.
again.
Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Have a good day in the south and a good evening in the north. Bye-bye.
Enjoy winter.
Yeah, we know.
Bye.
Bye.